Rock isn't dead. It's in flux. Hi everyone, I'm Britt with Rock and Flux, and I'm joined today by Johnny Dynamite of Johnny Dynamite and the Bloodsuckers. Thank you for being with me. Do you prefer to be called Johnny or John or...
Honestly, you could call me either Johnny or John, whichever works for you.
Okay, cool. How did you get started? Give me some background on your band and kind of how you came to be.
Well, I was playing in bands for probably the past 10 years as a drummer, and it got to a certain point where I was playing drums in 5 different bands. I was sitting on all these songs that I've just been writing and recording in my own room. And one day I was just you know what? Let me just throw together a band, just see how they sound together live. From there, I just started focusing on it more and more. And I would say it was up until 2020, I was still playing drums in all these bands. And then once the pandemic hit, it almost kind of gave me a reason to quit all the bands I was playing drums in and just fully focus on my own music. That's when I finished writing the album Sleeveless that came out in 2021. And from there, I've just been focusing on it entirely.
And do you play the drums for this band? You're the singer, so I'm assuming you have someone else play drums for you when you're playing live.
Yeah, I actually considered playing drums and singing in the band because you don't really see too many people do that very often. But I had done that in a past band, and when you're going on tour, you're singing, you're playing drums every night, you're just exerting yourself so much. You get off stage, you just want to fall over because it's I would say singing and drums are both the most exhausting instruments to do live.
Yeah, for sure.
I was you know what, maybe I'll get off the drum kit for this. And now I just sing and play guitar in the band.
And can you tell me about the name? Where did you get the name idea from?
So the name Johnny Dynamite, my grandpa, he was a comic book artist back in 50s, 60s, 70s. And he had a comic book called Johnny Dynamite. That was one of his characters. It was a detective of the underworld in Chicago. And for a long time, I was just do I give myself a band name or whatever? And I was just you know what, let me just pay some homage to my grandpa and just call myself Johnny Dynamite. But then funny enough, I was about to put some songs out on Spotify. And then it had to be a month before I released my first album. And I see this one artist, Johnny Dynamite, show up with 3 songs. And he was a soul singer in the 50s. And he only had 3 songs. I was and the Bloodsuckers.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's funny. What made you, was there any reason for the Bloodsuckers, or you just came up with that? The comic book name was only Johnny Dynamite, right?
Yeah, that's just Johnny Dynamite. Okay. I've always had a fascination with vampires. I think that's pretty much it.
Cool. The occult. Nice.
Yeah.
So if you had to tell, for people who maybe have not heard any of your music before, if you had to pick one of your songs to suggest to them to listen to first, which one would it be?
I'd probably say Bats in the Woods. It seems to be the one that has resonated with most people.
Let's give that a listen. What about that song do you think resonates with people? Why do you think that is? I have noticed on Spotify, I think it does have the most plays for you. What do you think the reason is for that?
I feel like it's so hard to say. Like, I feel like today, like songs have been getting like shorter and shorter. And I was like kind of worried putting out that one as a single because it's nearly 5 minutes long. But I think maybe it's something just about like the repetition of the chorus, like "Ready or Not, Here I Come." Yeah. I really don't know though.
I that is my personal favorite, and I think that is, I like the "Ready or Not, Here I Come" part. I don't know why, but it's like, it reminds me of some ways, like, because it's like, I know you mean well, but we're up to no good. I don't know. I think that's a really cool lyric because it's so applicable to so many different things in life. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think that's why I like the music of it too. But like those lyrics, it's like an earworm. I don't know.
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you.
I really think it's a cool concept. Yeah. So, and you have, from what I was looking at, you have 2 albums. So you put out one in 2020, and then the most recent one was Sleeveless that you released in 2021. I know you were saying that you had a bunch of songs already. Were both of those album songs that you had already recorded, or did you do more for Sleeveless after you released Heartbroken, which was the 2020 release?
So, yeah, actually, a lot of the songs that were on Sleeveless were also written around the same time as Heartbroken. There's only 2 songs really that I wrote in 2020, which are Abasement Tapes, which is actually about just like having to move back into my father's place because I wasn't making any money. Mm-hmm. There was no way for me to get a job at the time. Yeah. And so I wrote that one about like living with my father, who at the time just got really into Jesus and Christianity. Oh, and so it was like a little bit of that. And then also the song The Prey, which I just felt like there's so much tension in like the political climate during that time. Yeah. And it really just felt like we were all getting pinned against each other when like, I just personally feel like, you know, we have to like figure out a way to work together, work through our differences, because it just felt like so much was holding us down at that time. But yeah, other than that, like a lot of those songs, like Can't Stop My Love and Bats in the Woods and stuff like that were all written like around the Heartbroken album.
Okay. And then you just put them on the new one. Basically.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was like saving some of them because like I put out the Heartbroken record as like just by myself. I just threw it up on Spotify, no label or any promotion. I just wanted something out there, and I kind of wanted to save some of the better ones for Sleeveless.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, let's talk about that. I mean, the pandemic still comes up all the time. I think it's especially, you know, applicable to musicians because essentially I feel like everybody basically said, like, we just started writing or we took a break from it entirely because, I mean, it was completely shut down for you all, pretty much. I mean, you could release things still, but as far as, like, actually playing in front of people, which I think is one of the biggest elements to being a musician, it was just not going to happen. So how do you feel? Do you feel like that you still feel effects of all of that? Or how do you feel? Like, are you able to play more shows now? Or, you know, how did you feel going through that whole process?
Well, right now it feels like it's like pretty back to normal in terms of touring and such. Like, you know, every once in a while you come across like a protocol where it says like, oh, wear your mask in the green room or such and such. And there's still like always the worry of like going on tour and being like, I'm from the East Coast, but being like stuck out in the Midwest, you get COVID. Now you can't play a show. You have to like cancel all your shows. Right. That's a bit of a nightmare. So when I'm on the road, I do like to like wear a mask, get my booster before leaving and stuff. But at the time, like when I was getting ready to release Sleeveless, I didn't even know if it was going to be an album that I could tour on or if it was just something that was just going to be completely like an internet thing. Right. But you have been able to tour on it. Yeah. And then like I found out like once it was like getting closer to that summer, like, okay, it looks like I'm going to be able to tour. So I got the band together and made that happen. But that first tour that we did on that album, there was like a lot of worry everywhere that we went. And everyone was like advised to wear masks at shows and just like, you know, don't get too close to each other and all that. Right. So you're from Philadelphia, aren't you? I'm actually from New York City. Okay. I just moved to Philly in October. Okay. What made you move there? I couldn't afford New York City anymore. It's it's gotten really crazy. Just like in terms of like trying to prove your credentials, like I could show these landlords like, hey, look, I was like making enough money. I was working in film at the time,
Yeah.
and like they would still be like kind of worried because it's like somewhat of a freelance job. There was just no way for me to secure an apartment without having some sort of guarantor who could say like, oh, like if they can't pay rent, then I'll pay so much money out my ass. So like me and my partner, we just started looking in Philly, and it was just much easier to come down here. And the Born Losers guys are down here, and a lot of friends are down here too. So it seems to be the place to be.
Yeah, it's funny. So I found you on Spotify, like many other artists that I find, and it was funny because I had no idea that you were on Born Losers, and I went to college with Chris. So he and I are old college friends, and we're like friends on social media and stuff, but we don't talk all the time. And I kept seeing Born Losers, and I'm like, why is that ringing a bell to me? Like, what is familiar about that? And then I put two and two together. I'm like, oh, holy crap. Like that, what a small world that you're on his label. And then I talked to him. I was like, you know, I just found Corinne and Johnny Dynamite and the Bloodsuckers, and I just realized that they're like on your stuff. And it's awesome what they've been able to do with that label. They have some really cool artists on there. So
yeah, no, they're incredible. Honestly, I was like so drawn to them. I found out about them because of the band Corinne, who's on their label. I saw them play a show a while back, and I was blown away. And I just started following them, and then I kept seeing like Born Losers being tied to their name, and I was like getting into their artists. I was like, wow, like this label is like pretty small at the time, and they're putting out a lot of cool stuff, and they seem to have like a good eye for like aesthetics.
Yeah. Chris is awesome. I reminded him of this other story because, and it's not really totally on topic, but it just speaks to his talent as a musician. And then even with this label, we were in this class that we had to, it was like a Pro Tools class. And one of the projects was, at the time, the Spider-Man movie had come out, and it was like a big deal, and the whole score for it. And we had to recreate that score for the trailer as a project. And he was one of the first people to submit his. And the teacher played it for us because he was like, this is great. And the whole class was just like, what? I have to play with that? Because it sounded like exactly, just using like a MIDI keyboard, exactly like it, almost better than the trailer. And we were just like, you can't, like, I'm not going to compete with that. So it's just,
oh my God.
Yeah, he's very, very talented. It's a funny story. And so you've only released Sleeveless with them on the label.
Yeah, I just did Sleeveless with them. They did like put out Heartbroken again on like CD and cassette, but it wasn't like a real like release.
Okay. And so, like, you talked about touring. How extensively have you been able to tour now that it's kind of allowed back? I feel like I've seen that you have some shows coming up with Corinne, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I played a show with Corinne, I think in February for their album release.
Okay.
But right now, I don't have. I have things in the works, but nothing that's fully set in stone. Okay. But I am hoping to do like a Northeast tour in mid to late August.
Okay. Just like Northeast only, or do you think you'll expand out at all? It's probably easier for you to do Northeast.
Yeah, I think for this one, we'll just be focusing on the Northeast and kind of just like pick like sections at a time. Okay. So we're not like just out on the road for like months.
Right. Do you have a favorite place to play? Like a favorite region or even like a favorite venue?
Honestly, I got to tour the West Coast last year, and I had never been to LA in my entire life. And it was like such a magical show. Like this has never happened to me before, where I'd like cry a little on stage, and it happened to me there just because like the audience was incredible. It was probably also the biggest audience I ever played to. And it was just such a great night.
Yeah. Cool. Do you remember what the venue was?
I think it was called the Catch One. Cool. Yeah, it seemed like one of those venues that would have like some smaller rooms, but then bigger rooms.
Yeah. It's interesting because so many bands, I kind of liken you to a lot of there's a lot of bands coming up, and I think it's getting more and more popular, like the new wave influenced music. And I think your music is very much that 80s influence. And I'm sure you have other influences as well, but just like that synth and that feel to it. And I feel like LA especially has a lot of bands that are of that scene, and it's been really supportive of them. So like Drab Majesty and like Sacred Skin, if you've listened to them at all, like bands like that. And it almost feels like there's kind of a community that's popping up, especially in LA for that.
Yeah, totally.
But I also feel like, not that I think the East Coast is right there with it. And especially because Corinne's in Philadelphia too. So they've got their own set of artists also. But it is kind of cool that it's like coming to be.
Like, that's what kind of like draws me to LA a little bit, because like I've even been asked like multiple times, like, are you from LA? I'm like, no, I've just been East Coast my entire life.
Yeah.
But it does seem like the music, like the kind of music, like you're saying, the new wave and stuff like that tends to be more on the West Coast there, whereas like the East Coast is a little bit more, I think, like rock and roll influenced.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I call this show Rock and Flux because, and that's a question that we'll get to eventually too, but I think it's all rock and roll, but I know what you mean. It's like the more like gritty, old school, what you would consider that. But like for me, like I feel you all would kind of fall into, the Depeche Mode, Cure, that whole scene, which is rock, but then you also get the goth and the electronic and all those other elements, which I guess that's why I'm drawn to that type of music, because it is so many different components to it versus just straight up rock and roll. Like, I don't know why, but I've always just loved synth. So.
Oh, yeah, me too.
What other influences, like what made you get into writing this type of music? What are your biggest influences?
I would say like, I have to throw The Cure out there always, because but whose like influence isn't The Cure? I also I really like The Replacements, which is more of like a rock and roll band. Mm-hmm. My influences come from kind of all over the place. Like I love modern pop music too. Like I'm not gonna hate Justin Bieber. I sing his songs in the shower. Yeah, like lots of modern pop. I love hip hop, and I feel like a lot of my drum beats, I like to use like certain like hip hop styles in it, like more like 16th notes on the kick drum, where it like kind of gives you something where you can bop to a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. So you said that you sing in the shower, because I've had a mix of answers from people who are singers. Either they do it all the time in the shower, in the car, or whatever. And then others are like, no, because I do that for a living. So you're not going to hear me just like randomly singing a song. Are you more the one that will just like sing anytime?
I feel like it's when like something's really stuck in my head, I'll like find myself doing it and being like, oh, I didn't even mean to do that. It just came out of me. Yeah. And then other times I'll just take a normal shower.
So, but like, do you feel like as a person who is professionally a singer, do you feel that you go one way or the other on that? Like, do you have any feelings about it, or is it just kind of, it is what it is?
Yeah, it's totally impromptu.
Yeah. And what Justin Bieber songs were you singing?
Is it too late now to say sorry?
Oh, that is an earworm. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So to the other question that we were just talking about, I'll bring it back up. So I typically do ask everybody who comes on the show, is rock and roll dead? And my whole thing is that it's in flux. I think it just depends on how you define rock and roll. But I'd be curious to know, what your thoughts are and how you define it. And do you think it's dead?
I think that's a really good question, because like you said, like rock music is ever evolving, ever in flux. And I think it's only dead when we like restrict it to being like calling music like rock music, when it's like guitar based and like uses like blues riffs or something like that. But like you said, I think like my music could be considered rock music if like purists aren't gonna be like, no, it's not rock and roll, he uses drum machines or something like that. But I would like to call it rock music, because I think it's like rock music, punk music. There's a certain ethos that comes with it, that it should like come through the genre, and like if that's not coming through, then it's not rock. And where it's not punk.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of the baseline. So I would say it's not dead and it'll never die unless people like really box it in.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the whole point of rock and roll, and it kind of goes back to that Jack Black movie, School of Rock. It's like, it's about sticking it to the man and having a good time and being true to yourself. And, you know, like that kind of concept should never die. You know, you should always be true to yourself and not just follow what you're told to do or told to think.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think punk especially took that from rock and then, you know, went even further with it. Which, like, that's funny, too, because, like, that's the new subgenre is the post-punk. And theoretically, all of the bands that I talk to could be put into that. I don't like putting people into baskets, but it's, like, all-encompassing now.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
But, and I do think, and some people have said this to me, and I do agree with this, that the concept of a rock star is kind of dead. Like, the Motley Crue era is... maybe it shouldn't come back. Because,
I was just gonna say if that I don't think that could exist in today's climate.
Yeah, I mean it was the hair metal thing was fun, and I still love some of that music, and I'll still listen to it to this day. But I don't know that it's not even like, I think a lot of people now think of that this is more of a business and like they are more serious about what they're doing and how they're trying to perform and everything else. And reality is like, Vince Neil's not as cool because he's older now and no one wants to see an old dude like drunk and trying to get chicks. So, you know, it has more of a shelf life. And I think more people now are more aware of the fact it's like, well, I want to have some longevity here. I don't necessarily need to do that.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like the rock stars of like our times now are more of like rappers, you know?
Yeah, it's true. But again, like longevity wise, you know, it's funny because like I'm starting to be like my dad, because before I used to, and I still listen to some hip hop and rap and everything, but are all of those songs going to be played 20 years from now? Probably not, you know? Some of them. Some of them. Yeah. But not all of them. You know, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, the one thing I like pretty much all music. The one thing I can't get into is like the mumbling stuff. I just can't.
Yeah, no, I have trouble with that too. Like a lot of the rap music I listen to is more of, I guess, what they consider like silver age, where it's like, you know, like Biggie Smalls and, and stuff like that.
Well, now that will stay forever. Like
exactly, like that's already proven the test of time.
Oh yeah, and I think they've already been proving that. But again, like they were more about the lyrics and the skill of how they were actually rapping over the you know what I mean? Like there was care about the art of it, not just I'm just going to do this to have fun and get money or whatever else, you know. Obviously they cared about that too, but they clearly loved what they were doing, and I think that shows with, because I don't think that there's, and I mean there's an argument, but I personally don't think that there's been a better rapper than Notorious B.I.G. Like the way he did it.
I'm right there with you on that.
So yeah. Well, cool. This has been a really good conversation. So do you have anything for listeners? Like what's coming up for you? I know you said you're going to do some touring in the Northeast. Any new music or other things that they should be looking out for?
Yeah, I'm going to be releasing a record probably towards the end of summer, and it's actually getting mastered tomorrow. So it's done. It's like about to be completely off my plate. And I'm hoping to see some singles show up probably like late spring, early summer.
Very nice. And anything that they can anticipate from that? Is it going to be kind of a continuation of Sleeveless, or do you think it's going to sound significantly different?
Everyone who I've showed it to, which is probably maybe like 5 people, they've all said that it's significantly different. So I'm going to go with them, but like it's my voice. It's honestly like all like similar tones, same instruments that I'm using, but just kind of different.
When you record, do you play everything, or do you have the band come and record with you?
Yeah, I do like 99% of everything, I would say, but I do have like, there's going to be saxophone on my new record, and my partner played that. And one of the songs on the record was actually written by one of the other band members, and he also played some stuff on it. And there's like some minor production things that happen with them throughout the record, but typically it's me playing everything, and then I send it to Trey from the band Corinne, who's also on Born Loose. He does the mixing, and he adds some production too.
Cool. I like the fact that there's going to be some saxophone, because I think it's an underutilized instrument.
Totally.
It's going to be, that's fun. I always think of like that one video of that guy like playing it everywhere. I don't remember. Years ago, you know? But yeah, that's awesome. So that's exciting. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been really, really fun and interesting to hear all about your band. So I appreciate it. For people following, you're on Instagram. Your music is on Spotify. What's your Instagram handle? So just so everyone can follow.
My Instagram is at johnny.dynamite.
Very cool. And you're streaming on Spotify, Amazon, all the channels for where?
All the big streamers.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you, Johnny. I appreciate it.